Part by the following sponsors: the Trial Lawyers Association of BC, the Vancouver Courier newspaper, my new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. He's been an integral part of Surrey public life for about 20 years now, as he was first elected to council in 1993. Quickly then became the mayor and held that chair through 3 elections. To his and I think a lot of other people's surprise, he was then booted out by Dianne Watts, who is the current incumbent, but she is stepping away, and many of us will wonder where we will see her surface again. She has been I think quite popular, and a lot of people are quite impressed by her. In any event, he, Doug McCallum, is saying, you know what, I'm going to take that chair back. Why are you doing this, Doug?
Well, I think over the last few years, I have seen a lot of problems start to grow in Surrey, and haven't, the solutions for those problems haven't been brought forward by the current council. And a lot of people have said to me that the council seems to have been asleep in the last couple of years. And so I've got this fire in my belly that has been growing over the last few years, and because I'm a problem solver. I want to work for the people to solve their problems, and I've lived all my life in Surrey, and so to see these problems start to creep up in our communities, you know, I just felt really important that I sort of step forward and try to solve those problems for them.
Okay, I want to get into some of those issues, but on a personal level, I mean, you and I are just about the same age, and I feel the sense of aging. I'm not falling over or anything, but I feel that I move slower, and I don't really want to do a bunch of things that I'm asked to do because I just don't want to do them. What is it about that assignment? You must have loved it when you were mayor. You must have gotten what is it that is it having your face in front of the camera? What is it?
You know what it is? It's as simple as I love people. I love working with people. I love trying to help people solve the problems, whether it's in the nonprofit field or whether it's being a mayor of a city. I love that. I love talking to people in our community. And if they have a suggestion or something, I love to work on it. And my background in business has been always to solve problems. So
I suddenly remembered, I didn't remember this until this second as you started to talk about loving to work with people, that I came to your office when you were mayor to talk about some drug rehab issue. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember you were very open and you were inviting and so on.
Well, that's the reason why I want to run again. Is I love solving people's problems, and I love Surrey.
Okay, let's look at some of the specifics. You've already put out some of your platform, and I think one of the biggest issues, 2 of the biggest, are the ward system and crime. So let's start with the ward system. So many people have wanted wards in communities all over BC, and yet we never seem to get there.
Well, I think when you look at Surrey, over the last 10 years, the population's grown about 120,000 people. And the other thing is Surrey geographically is made up of a third parkland, a third agricultural land, and a third residential commercial.
Yes.
And it's interesting that the agricultural part of it splits Surrey right down the middle. The agricultural land is in the middle of Surrey.
Right.
And so we have these different areas within Surrey, different communities that work very well as communities. But it also geographically, with the ward system, gives a good geographic base to put 4 wards into it.
Are you saying, we look at these communities, Cloverdale, Guildford, Fleetwood, Newton Whalley, and South Surrey, are you saying that each of them would have, say, 2 councillors?
No, what I'm proposing is 4 wards.
Yes.
Okay, each ward would elect 2 councillors. That would be 8, which is the same number that's there currently. Each ward would have roughly the same population, 125,000 people, and you can break those out pretty good.
What's the downside historically anywhere? One thinks of Chicago, for example, and Chicago is probably one of the toughest and wisest, smartest political towns in the world. One thinks of the ward system where you have ward bosses and people, you know, who are kind of controlling things very strongly locally.
Yeah. Well, I think when you look at, and I've looked at right across Canada, BC is the only province that has cities that do not have a ward system. Every other province in Canada has them. And I've looked at the ward system in Toronto, for example, when I was mayor, and they had asked me, because I was part of a committee on the Big City Mayor's Caucus.
Yep.
And the ward system does have or creates discussion between wards and certain things. But it's important to have a strong mayor, because the mayor would be elected generally in the city. And so
would the mayor be the only person elected at
at general?
Yes.
And it's up to the mayor, and mayors are always chairman of councils, that they have to reach consensus. That's their role as a chairman. So you have wards that have maybe 2 representatives from the wards, and it presents a lot better discussion at council for the city, and also the residents in the ward feel they have a lot better representation, a lot better direct representation to their councillor. In Surrey, if you have a problem in a part of Surrey, you don't know which of 8 councillors you should
right, but this way you could come to your guy.
You come to your guy or your 2 people, and then you feel a lot more comfortable as a citizen. It's all about giving the rights or the power or the election process back to the community rather than in slates that most cities are.
Simple question, are you creating more government?
No, less government, in fact. And I'm a big fan of having less government. I think Surrey's, that's a whole another area of finances that are out of control right now. I intend to, if I get elected, to trim down the finances. I think there's one word that describes what government should be in the future, and I'm a strong believer in that, and that's simple. We have to have a lot simpler government, and government that just...
We've taken, at the municipal level, at all levels, but especially the municipal level, we've taken on things that are way beyond us. We have no business doing.
A good example in Surrey is the Surrey Development Corporation. It's a huge quagmire where they've decided that they're going to go in and do development in Surrey. And cities have no business to do that, and they need to get out of that. We've got to bring back simple government.
But you were kind of famous during your run of kind of overseeing the development happened. But you're saying Surrey itself didn't do it. You just helped private people find ways to do.
Well, we encourage economic development, and I'm a big fan on that, that we need to encourage companies to come in. But the private sector is where the development occurs, not cities. Cities, that's not their mandate. Their mandate is to provide safety, fire and police.
Right, of course.
And maybe some, in Surrey's case, recreation. And then all the rest of it is more controls, like in engineering and planning. And so
you have a loving nickname in the East Indian community in Surrey, which is what, Paji?
Paji, yeah.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah, that's brother.
Brother. I when I first looked at it, I thought it meant Pope. Il Papa. It's like the Hindu version of Il Papa, right? Well, yesterday I had coffee. I can't say who this is, but he's a very well-known East Indian guy. And I said I'd be seeing you today, and he says, that guy made so many of my friends rich. Did you make a lot of people rich by helping them make their developments?
Well, I think what they did, they helped people in Surrey with jobs. I mean, one of the important things in development is it creates a huge amount of jobs. Look what housing does in the U.S. When it slumps and the jobs slump, the whole economy goes down. what we did in Surrey is encourage jobs, and that was an important thing that a lot of developers bring to Surrey, and we need to continue that. We need carpenters, plumbers, electricians.
What do you do? What do you do as mayor if let's say you have the ward system, and you got these 8 people representing 4 districts,
Right.
4 areas. You must have to work very hard to not suffer from favoritism.
Well, I think when you do that, I think when that is what council's all about. That's what we need. We need a lot more open discussion on council. The slate type of governing in cities that BC only has is top down. The slate says, let's all agree on this. Let's do that.
It's never been worse.
What I want to do is turn it upside down.
Yeah.
Okay, and it then becomes the people saying what they want through the ward.
What happens when an issue comes up for Ward A, and Ward C is sitting there going, what does Ward C do about an issue that's important to Ward A?
Well, they have to work together to reach a consensus. That's what council's all about. To a certain
So in a ward system, the people in the other wards must still be involved in matters that don't directly affect them.
Right. Well, for example, policing.
Okay.
It's policing would be a total, all the wards together, because it's for all the city working together. And so, to me, it's very, very much like TransLink used to be when it was run by the mayors of the thing. The board used to be all the mayors.
Yes, yeah.
And I was chairman at the time.
I know.
And I got elected from all the mayors, but every mayor had a different opinion in TransLink. And the job of the chairman is to try to reach a consensus.
Pull people together.
And get things done. And that lends itself to very open discussion, which I think the people in Surrey want. They want the open discussion. But there's another thing that wards really would bring to Surrey, and that was better representation of the different cultures. Right now, 52% of Surrey's population is, if you combine all the cultures together, 52%. And they're not
52% is what?
Is represents all the Indo-Canadians, Filipinos.
40+% Indo-Canadians, 10+% Filipino,
and then 5% of a number of other ones.
Everybody else,
They're 52%, and they're not representative on council as it currently stands. And the ward system would do that. It would give better representation to the different cultures.
One of your opponents is an East Indian woman. Is she going to win by a landslide?
I do not know. my thing on my thing that I'm running for, I'm going to put my issues out there, what I think the public issues are, and then I'm going to give solutions to them, and then I'm going to put them before the public.
What happens, happens.
And that's what the public can vote for.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks, Doug. When we come, we'll just take a little break. When we come back, let's talk about your thoughts about the RCMP and about crime, and a bit more about transit.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Doug McCallum is our guest, running for mayor of Surrey, and we'll just take a little breather, your chance to send us a note to davidberner.com, and our opportunity for those folks who support us here to say hello on Shaw Community Television Cable 4. Back in just a minute.
This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works.
Doug McCallum is no stranger to Surrey politics. He's been mayor 3 times, and he's batting .750. That's a good. That gets you to Cooperstown.
Yeah,
That's pretty good. So you're going to try for one more round at least. Let's talk about crime. I attended an event at, I can't remember what it was called. It wasn't the Arts Center. Anyway, it doesn't matter what it is. It's Newton something or other, a cultural center or something. A month ago, maybe, held by 3 of your local MLAs, and they were concerned about the issue of rogue recovery houses. As you know, as well as I do, Doug, Surrey has something like 168 so-called recovery homes for people allegedly in rehab for drugs and alcohol. Of those 160 plus, maybe 30 are really legitimate and doing real work, and the other are just scams, rip-offs. It's almost like human trafficking, you know, and it strikes many of us that Surrey itself is the one who has the ability to shut off that spigot with existing bylaws. You can go to some of these places and say, look, you don't have the right doors, you don't have the right windows, you don't have the right fire equipment, you're finished.
No, it's a problem in Surrey, and it's been growing in the last couple of years. And a part of the problem is recovery houses are legislative or controlled by the provincial government. But, and that's another resource that any mayor of Surrey has to get along with the provincial government, because we have to work with them in a whole number of areas. On recovery houses, I have proposed, because it really is a serious problem in a lot of our communities, is to set up a bylaws force consisting of bylaw officers, but also fire and police. Because it's a public safety issue in a lot of cases, the unregistered.
And for the people that I know and love and work with, Doug, in the recovery business, who are legitimate and serious and are helping people get clean and sober, these places are an embarrassment. They're an offense. I mean, they're offensive. You've got one guy in Surrey who has 10 homes, and everybody is on permanent methadone, okay? And you know who the guy is? He's a pharmacist.
Oh.
Not kosher.
No, it's not. The other big problem with unregistered ones is the BC government gives the welfare checks not to the clients, but to the landlord.
Yes, of course.
And
that's part of the scam.
That has to stop, because that just reinforces landlords to have all these unregistered houses. So I want to work with the provincial government, if I'm elected, to encourage them and work with them to change that procedure, that it doesn't go to the landlords, therefore it goes to the clients.
May I be so brazen as to suggest that you take the lead? If you're elected, I think Surrey has to take the lead, because the provincial government is a very big wheel. It turns very slowly, as you know.
Well, I work well with the provincial government, and I think Surrey does need to take the lead. And I have, by suggesting already that we'll set up this force to really crack down on the unregistered ones and close them down.
Good. I hope so.
And I think it's very important to do that, because when you talk about crime in communities, my approach is to be proactive in crime. In other words, get out in front of the crime. And you know, our police and many polices around the world have a tendency to be a reactive type thing. Something happens and then they investigate.
Then you respond,
I want to change that. I want to change that whole philosophy. I want the police to be out proactive. In every communities throughout Canada, but certainly in Surrey, crime starts with, it festers in an area. And it will start and let's take a recovery house. It will start in a recovery house. And then around it, all of a sudden, break and entries start happening, okay? That sort of then starts to fester a little more. And then there's drug dealing done. And then that starts to fester. And then gangs come in. And then gangs fester. And then all of a sudden you get homicides with that. So if we can get out in front and attack like unregistered recovery houses right before all these crimes happen, That's the type
I
of policing.
I agree with you, but you know there are built-in dangers to that. I agree with you,
Yeah.
but one of the built-in dangers is that we have this endless series of rights and freedoms for citizens, and to start profiling people in advance of crime is dangerous. In any event, you're also saying you want another 500 RCMP officers?
Yeah, Surrey.
How are you going to pay for that?
Well,
That's a lot of bodies.
Surrey Council has allocated 95 over the next 5 years. I'm saying I want those in the next 2 years. Only if, one condition, and a strong condition, that those come in and they go right out into our streets. Part of my crime strategy is to get the police out of their offices and onto our streets more often.
Are you saying that that's what they're doing at the moment?
They spend a lot of office time doing reactive.
Yes.
And I want to change that whole thing. I want them to be proactive. I want them to be out. I want more bike patrols. I want more foot patrols. I want, and there's another partner that we have to really encourage, and we're doing a pretty good job now, but I want to double that, and that's the public, and volunteering.
Yes.
On Speed Watch.
Do you have police community centers like Vancouver does?
Yeah, we have 5.
Good.
But
those
council,
are great.
but council just Monday night approved centralizing the police force in Surrey into the old city hall. And you know, that's going the completely wrong direction.
You want them spread. You want them everywhere.
I want them out. I want them in our police, 5 police communities and out in our communities. I don't want them in a centralized location.
Are people talking to you about this issue? Are people frightened? Are they saying we need?
People feel unsafe in Surrey now, especially
Certainly
with
since that woman was attacked outside.
The homicides increased 127% from 2012 to 2013. 127%.
Wow.
3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, we had 3 murders in 1 week. You know, and that's got to stop. We've got to react and get out in front of that again, and again get to the root source of why these things are happening, and that means putting the police out into our community.
You know, Doug McCallum, when I was a kid growing up in Winnipeg, a familiar sight, especially in the winter, were the city police wearing these big beaver coats, and they were kind of heroic to us when we were little kids. But Winnipeg was a kind of compressed town around 2 rivers. Surrey is so spread out. Putting cops more and more out there on the street is what you should do, but it's not easy.
Well, in the current situation where it's centralized, you know, a policeman has to come to the central office to pick up his car, then he's got to drive all the way out to the thing. So what I'm saying that we have to go opposite to centralization. We got to decentralize into our community police stations.
Okay. TransLink, transit. Transit's a huge issue. Charlie Smith, your old buddy from the Georgia Strait, has not been particularly kind to you over the years. He likes poking at you, and he has, you know, said that the Golden Ears Bridge was a big disaster. And I mean, I certainly would not pay to cross the Golden Ears Bridge. I mean, why would I pay to end up in Pitt Meadows or Maple Ridge? That's not what I want to do with my money. He's been really attacking you about the way you spent money with Canada Line. It came in higher than expected budget and so on. Aside from his comments, what's your dream for transit now?
Well, first of all, Canada Line came under budget and under time as far as...
I know it came in under time.
And it's been one of the huge success stories.
I know people like it.
The ridership was hit in the first year where we didn't even project, and right now it's at full volume. So the Canada Line has been a super success.
If you're elected, we just have 2 minutes. If you're elected, what would you do about transit that's more interesting than what we've got?
Well, for Surrey, we need to have light rail, and the Mayor's Council has approved that's the next priority in the region, and I'll push hard. One of the successes I had at TransLink is working with the provincial and federal governments to get the financing for it. So if I'm elected, that's my first priority in transportation, is start lobbying the provincial and federal government for money to build that light rail.
Surrey has become such an important player in the Lower Mainland, Doug, that I think it's impossible to do any real work anywhere in Vancouver or this area without finding yourself going to Surrey at least once a week. I do, you know, and that east-west connector can be a nightmare, you know. So I've actually turned around in the middle of it and broken an appointment because I'm not going to get there for another hour.
Yeah.
So if I could catch a light rail train, I'd be there.
Yeah. Well, we're going to work on that.
Have you looked at Luas?
Pardon?
Have you looked at Luas in Dublin?
No.
Made by the French.
No, I haven't.
Paid for the first year. Spectacular on the ground light rail.
Yeah, we've looked at, when I was in Translate, looked at a number of cities in Europe. All of them basically light rail.
Yeah.
There's some very new, efficient, quick systems that have been developed. That's what we want to see in Surrey. That's what my first priority is, to get that done in Surrey.
What are you going to do? We got 1 minute. What are you going to do about Dianne Watts Monument, the new city hall? You
that was
move in.
Yeah, that was a huge mistake. I mean, that is typical, and all this council voted for it, you know, and they pushed to have it, and it cost $150 million, taxpayers' dollars. Not one penny of that helps the public. Very bad decision.
Good luck.
Okay.
We'll watch closely.
Yeah. Okay.
Doug McCallum, many thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Next week, folks, what am I doing next week? Do you remember something about, oh yes, next week, there was a wonderful piece in the Globe about a gay couple trying to have foster children or adopt children, and so it became a bit of a nightmare where you would think that in this day and age it wouldn't be. But there's still some serious issues. So we'll have a lady from BC Association of Adoptive Parents joining us, and we hope you join us as well here on Shaw Community Television Cable 4. Good night.